Hi, I'm Johnita Barrett with Gluten-free, Dairy-free Living. And today I'm going to make a recipe that I've never made before. I'm really excited. It's for Christmas. It's a Mawmaw Doris's red velvet cake. I have never even tried to make a red velvet cake. So this is all new and we're going to see if it turns out as well as I hope it will. Now, of course, the original recipe is not gluten-free and dairy-free, so we're going to change it and make it so. So the first thing is it calls for a cup of buttermilk, and of course we can't use buttermilk, so we're going to use coconut milk. I'm going to measure a cup. And it also calls for a tablespoon of vinegar. And I'm going to put this vinegar in the coconut milk and let it sit for at least 10 minutes, and that will give us a substitute for buttermilk. So I'm just going to leave that alone while I do everything else. The rest of this coconut milk I will cover up in the refrigerator and I'll be able to use it for something else. The next step, it calls for 2 1/4 cups of flour. So we're of course going to use all-purpose gluten-free flour. Now, I've read in many recipes to make this cake lighter, airier, things like that, that it's best to use cake flour. Well, we don't have a gluten-free, dairy-free cake flour available at my grocery store. So I read about how to make a cake flour from a regular flour. So that's what we're going to do. For every cup of flour, I'm going to take 2 tablespoons of flour out and add 2 tablespoons of arrowroot. Some of the ones I read said to use cornstarch, but I don't really like to use cornstarch. I don't even have any, so I'm going to use arrowroot as a substitute. So cross our fingers and hope that that works. Now I also broke down and bought one of these sifters. Now my grandmother, this is what my grandmother always used on all of her cakes that she made. And of course she was a fabulous cook and everybody loved her stuff. But I never had one of these. So I happened to see one and I was walking in Walmart the other day. I think it's Walmart. It might have been a grocery store. I think it was Walmart. And I saw one and I thought, oh, I'm just going to have to buy it. I'm going to break down and buy it so I can start using it like my grandmother did when she made cakes. So I'm going to start with this. Now, what's really important, now this is going to add a lot of air to the flour, so I won't have to worry about this as much, but I can tell you it makes a difference because my daughter made the crust for a pie at Thanksgiving, and she did not spoon measure her flour. She just scooped the flour, and it made the crust very dense and needed more liquid than it was called for to make it. So it's very, very important you stir your flour around and you lightly spoon it into your measuring cups if you want to have your product not be so dense and heavy. Now this is going to alleviate all of that because I will measure it again after we sift everything together, but just want to let you know. There's one, and I'm going to use this tablespoon and go ahead and scoop out 2 tablespoons. Start the next measuring. I'll start the next measuring cup with those 2 tablespoons. Right. Alright, that's the second one. I'm going to measure 2 tablespoons out of this. And start it on my 4th cup. And this doesn't have to be just as exact because once I sift it, I will measure it again and that will be more exact. Okay, so this fourth cup, I'm going to take out 1.5 teaspoons. It's 1.5. All right. Now, let's take our tapioca and add 4 tablespoons and 1.5 teaspoons. Four. One. And a half. Okay. Now we'll spend a little time sifting this, and we'll sift it twice, and then we'll remeasure, and then we'll add some other ingredients and sift it one more time. You just turn the crank and it just gets everything all mixed together, sifted together. All right. Now, for the real measurement, so now this would be considered cake flour, gluten-free cake flour. So, all right, there's one. All right, and then a fourth a cup. The last little bit, and I can tell it's already going to be some leftover flour. So that's going to show you just how effective it is when you sift your flour. Now, will I sift flour if I'm making just a sheet cake? And I don't know. I'll have to see. I know my grandmother did every single time. That's all the flour we need, and look, we've measured it once already. See how much flour is left over? And that's just extra that it would make the cake more dense, and I'm trying to make it a little bit airier. So, now let's add the other dry ingredients and sift those together. I have 1 teaspoon of baking soda. It's 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm going to use sea salt. And 2 tablespoons of cocoa. Sift it together. know what I noticed on this, because you could see it, is the cocoa that was sitting on top came through really quickly. It's already all the way through, so it mixes it as it sifts it. All right. So now we have our dry ingredients, except for sugar, but sugar you kind of consider a wet ingredient because it kind of melts. So it's all ready to go. We're going to put it aside. Let me clean up a little bit, and then we'll start on our wet ingredients. All right, ready for the wet ingredients. We're going to use 2 eggs, and if you can get them to room temperature first, or just a little close to room temperature, that would be best. These are pasture-raised eggs, bright orange yolk. And we're going to mix the 2 eggs with a cup of sugar and another half cup of sugar. And we're going to beat these until they're fluffy with our electric blender. Okay, it's pretty fluffy. It's dripping everywhere. All right, to this we're going to add a cup of oil. Now I used this extra light taste olive oil. I used 3/4 cup, and then I'm going to use another 1/4 of a cup of my butter flavored olive oil, because it calls for butter flavoring in this cake, but I can't use butter flavoring because it has butter in it. So, or milk products of some sort. So I'm going to use this butter olive oil just to give it a little bit of that butter taste. But you do not want a rich tasting olive oil, because they can have a strong flavor. You want something very light. Okay, so I'm going to blend this together, and then we'll start adding some more things. Okay, now I'm going to take our buttermilk, our coconut and vinegar buttermilk. It's not buttermilk, it's just a substitute. But you need a cup of this. Add that in. I'm just going to let that, add it in like that. And go ahead and add in my vanilla. I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So 1, 2. And red food coloring. Now I had a little pack of 4 food colorings, you know, red, green, blue, yellow, but it was not enough in these little containers. So you need to buy a full thing of food coloring that's just red, because you need a full ounce, which is 2 tablespoons, just a good bit. It's brand new. I had to go get it because I realized I didn't have enough. That almost took, if not the whole thing, maybe. Yeah, it took the whole thing. I should have just looked on this. This is 1 ounce. Then you get the big container, it's 1 ounce, and that's what you need, the whole thing. So now we know. All right, let's get this blended. Okay. Now let's take our wet ingredients and start adding them little by little to our dry ingredients. Alright, remember to start on low. You don't want flour to go everywhere. Alright, let's prepare our pans. This is actually enough for 3 cake layers, but I'm only going to make 2, so I'll use this sheet cake. I'll use this as a sheet cake. Now this is coconut oil, and I spray it very liberally because I don't want it to stick. Okay. If I was doing 3, that's all I would put in each one, but I think I'm just going to fill these up and not use that other, because these are deeper cake pans than my other ones, so I think it will make a thicker cake. It may take a little longer in the oven, but okay, these are going to go into the oven 350 degrees until they're done. That's pretty much what the recipe says from Mawmaw Doris. So I'll just have to keep checking them. Probably I'll check them at 25 minutes and then 30 and 35 and kind of gauge it from there. Like I said, these are going to be a little thicker cakes because it calls for 3, so it's going to take a little longer to cook anyway. So let's put them in and cross our fingers. Okay, it took about 40 minutes in my oven. I kept testing it 25, 30, 35, 40. I would stick a toothpick in the middle of them and they would come out with something on it, so I'd do another 5 minutes. So at 40 minutes, it came out clear. So I hope they're done all the way through. I'm going to place them together. It's been about 10 minutes. I let them sit on this rack to cool some. And now I'm going to flip them over and let them cool completely on this rack. Alright. Wish me luck. Let's see. Best way to do this, I don't know. Ta-da! 1, 2. Perfect. So we're going to let this cool completely. We don't want to have any heat before when we frost it. It feels nice and springy. Alright, our cakes have cooled down completely and it's time to make our frosting. So we're going to have 1 stick of butter. Since we can't do butter, we're doing a dairy-free butter substitute, and that's a 1/2 cup. So there goes that, and you want it to be softened somewhat. So, and this is dairy-free cream cheese, 8 ounces. I want all of that. A teaspoon of vanilla. And it says a box of powdered sugar, but I didn't have a box at home, so I have a bag, and I looked to see, and it is 1 pound is in a box of sugar, in case you didn't know, and this is 2 pounds. So I'm going to just find the center and divide it like this. Then I have this little tie, and I'm going to wind it around the center so that I won't mix it up when I open one side. I'm just going to wind it really, really tight so that it won't get through. And I'm going to actually mix this first before I add the powdered sugar. I'm going to mix this together first, and then we'll add the powdered sugar. Alright, so let's just make a hole in the one side. And let's get a different knife. Let's get some scissors and make a hole. How about that? Alright. All this powdered sugar. No. Okay. My daughter is cracking up on the other side. Hey daughter, will you turn the light on? I forgot to turn that on too. She is cracking up, having a good old time at her mama's expense. That's okay. I'd be laughing too. Yay. Okay, here we go. All the powdered sugar. One pound powdered sugar. the sugary way. All right, so let's start on low so we don't spread this all over the kitchen. Actually, now I took a cup of chopped pecans and toasted them and let them cool before I add them to the frosting. And I don't know how long really to tell you to toast them. I toast them on medium heat, and I just would shake them and flip them every so often until I could really smell the toast. And you can taste it. You taste a raw one, taste a toasted one, you can tell the difference. So I don't really have the exact time to tell you. Also, I noticed when I was at the grocery store looking for that butter extract so I could read what was in it and found out I couldn't have it, I saw that there was clear vanilla extract. And so this is a little off-white, but if I had used the clear instead of the colored vanilla extract, it might have been a much whiter icing. So let's just fold these in here. And as you know, I'm not a cake decorator, but I just make good food to eat. And most importantly, it's gluten-free and dairy-free. All right, here we go. All right. Come off, come off, come off. Now I get this off of here without tearing it apart. There we go. Ta-da! Now, I've seen people, you know, cut off the top of cakes and all that when they're cake decorating, and that would probably be a good idea, but I'm just going to make it for at home, so I'm just going to ice it like this. My kids don't care. They'll just like to eat it. It's always tricky to me because I'm not a decorator, how much to put in the middle, because I want to have enough to go over the outside and the top, so I don't ever know when to stop in the middle. Whoops. My granddaughter just had her second birthday, and they bought a cake from a bakery that was, you know, really dynamite, but it had this nice thick layer of icing in between each of the cake layers, and it was just really delicious. So I want to have enough where you can see it when we cut it. All right, I think that'll do. Pretty good. goes nothing. Not the most beautiful cake, but it's gonna taste good. I know it. Now I'm gonna put it in the refrigerator and let it set up a little bit before I slice it. And hopefully all the icing won't fall off while it's in the refrigerator. But you know, never know. It's a new recipe. So I've never tried it before. All right. Refrigerator we go. Okay, it's been in the refrigerator at least 30 minutes or so it's ready to try. Mawmaw Doris's red velvet cake. Let's see. Ta-da! All right. Now let's give it the taste test. See if we like it. It's good. Dairy-free, gluten-free, red velvet cake for Christmas. If you enjoyed my video, please subscribe below and click the bell so you'll get all my new videos as they come out.